So before I get started with my presentation, I just wanted to get a show of hands. How many of us in the room are startup founders or business owners? Okay, good amount.
That's a quick question. Yeah.
We'll run with it. How many of you are engineers? Oh, good amount of engineers too. And any designers in the house? Are you? Great. Cool. This presentation is mostly going to be from the hat of a small business owner or a startup founder. And let's just dive into it. So, apologies if this is kind of small. I thought that we would have a bigger monitor. But for today's agenda, I'm going to tell you a little bit about our user experience meetup group and a little bit about myself. And then we're going to dive into what is user experience design, what it is and what it's not, and also why founders and business owners should invest in UX. After that, we're going to go into the tools. There's 3 different tools that user experience designers use to help make products a lot more user-friendly. And I'm going to walk you through these tools so that you can use them for your businesses today. And then hopefully I can get through these pretty fast because I really want to address what your guys' questions are. Feel free to ask me questions or stop me at any time of during my presentation. All right. So I'm just one of the 6 different organizers of the UX Meetup group. We meet during the Las Vegas Tech Alley group at 1:15 in Suite 101 on Saturdays. The 3rd Saturday is when the Las Vegas meetup is. Does anybody go to that meetup group?
Yeah.
Woo! Me too. This is my first Henderson one, and I'm really excited to be here because it's a lot closer. And for those of you who are not part of our group, we have a group on LinkedIn. This is kind of where we post updates on the different events that we have. This year, we were hoping to have a lot more meetups that involve working together. So hopefully we can get into a space where we can actually do some workshopping and it's less of me trying to talk to you guys because I think the magic happens when you're actually creating and using the tools. All right, so a little bit about me. My name is Abigail. I've been a designer for 15 years, which is a little bit nuts because that's half of my life. And I was most recently working in the product design space for a health tech product. But before I got into that, I was actually a graphic designer doing traditional graphic design for t-shirts and packaging and things like that. And when I first moved to Las Vegas, I was into the trade show and print industry, which is actually really big out here. So I've worked with companies like GES and Freeman. And then when COVID shut down is when I pivoted to user experience design. So like I mentioned upstairs, I worked for a company called Omnicell, which is a health tech company. It's an enterprise software company. And this is the cabinets that I worked on. So what's interesting is that as a user experience designer, I worked on the software, but also the hardware. So it was really cool to be able to talk about the different interactions between what the software is doing and what the hardware was doing. Very unique technical space. I was very fortunate because this woman on the left is my cousin and she's in Ireland, but she works with the Omnicell. And so I was able to connect with my family members who use the software and get their feedback on how they interact with the cabinets day to day at their hospitals. So this is what the Omnicell product looks like today. It's a 30-year-old product. And I had the pleasure of designing software that was beautiful but also functional. So to be able to go to the hospitals, interview nurses and kind of see how they interact with these things to understand their pain points and make their workflows a lot easier. And today I am starting to work with my husband here, Justin. He is an engineer and we're starting a coaching business called Value Driven Careers. So shameless plug to follow along with our LinkedIn page. Maybe if you are an engineer or you know somebody who is an engineer and wants to grow in their career, definitely talk to Justin or me about what we're starting. All right, let's get into it. So for today, talking about what is UX, and the best way to talk about UX is talk about what it's not. So what it's not is marketing. User experience design versus marketing. I think marketing brings in a lot of users, but user experience design is what's going to keep them and have them stay on your platform. It's also not graphic design. So the difference between user experience design and graphic design is graphic design really focuses on the aesthetics and your brand personality of your company, versus user experience design focuses more so on the functionality of your product or how it works. And I think that's what got me into graphic design versus user experience. I'm not very creative. I'm creative in a different sense where graphic design focuses more on the visuals, motion graphics, making things look pretty, but user experience design really focuses on the psychology, its database, or you can really understand a lot more of the logical standpoints, and I think that it's really interesting to be able to understand the unique pain points of your users and then actually solve their problems rather than just focusing on making something look pretty. User experience design is also not user interface design. I know that when I first started my career in UX, I didn't really understand what the difference was between it, but I think that this logo or this image here really kind of captures what the difference between UI and UX is. So UI, if you guys can't tell, that's the Heinz ketchup bottle, and it's the old classic bottles are glass bottles and they look really pretty with their label, but they're actually not functional. So at the bottom you see that the guy is trying to hit the bottle of the ketchup because, you know, with the glass it's kind of hard to take out the ketchup to get it on your hot dog. But for the change that they did in their bottle design was, one, they flipped it over so that the bottom or the lid is on the bottom now, and that makes the ketchup come up a lot easier when you squeeze, and it's also consistent. And the two, instead of using glass, they use plastic. And so that's kind of illustrates what user experience designers do, is kind of figure out how the product can be more easy for the user to use. All right. Any questions before I go on to what user experience is? Okay. So, what is it then? To quote Steve Jobs, design is not just what it looks like and feels like, but design is how it works. Or to put it in another way, a startup with a great idea but a poor UX will struggle. So it's kind of like the news. For some reason, we remember the news because when they show bad things, right? We just remember the negative things. And for your product, people are going to remember if it is a bad experience. They're going to be frustrated, and they're going to remember more so that your thing didn't work than when you have a user experience that's beautiful, because design that's beautiful is also invisible, and we don't really think about it because it's so natural to us. So what does it look like? User experience looks like understanding the pain points of users and how they take shortcuts using your product rather than the actual way that it's designed. And so this illustration shows kind of people taking a shortcut rather than trying to go through your thing. For business owners, maybe you have a product that you think works or has been built with engineers without the actual user experience in mind. So understanding the user's pain points and the way that they think about things will definitely help you to make an experience where people aren't taking the shortcut. It also looks like guiding your users with affordances in order to reduce friction and attrition. So affordances are kind of like visual cues to help your users to understand what they need to do next without having to actually think about it. So some things you might see online are carousels. You might see the little dots at the bottom, or you might see arrows that help you know to swipe to the next image. But this is kind of one of the age-old user experience affordances that we see in the wild. Usually when you have doors, you get frustrated because you don't know whether to push or what to pull. But with the way that this works, and the reason why it works is because for the push, you have that visual cue that there's no handle there, so the only thing you can do is push. But it also has the words, so that it kind of reinforces that thinking in your brain, okay, this is where I need to push. But for the pull, you have a bar there. Okay, now you have a visual indicator that you need to pull the door, but you also have the words to indicate that that's what you need to do. So when you translate that into online, maybe you have icons on your menus to help the user know that which navigation item that they're going to click. But what I also advocate is for having your icons and some text, so that way people who are new to your platforms will understand that this is where you need to go in order to get to that menu item. Eventually they'll know where to go after they spent time in your product, but for new users it's really good to have your icons and your text just to reinforce that. It also looks like understanding your business goals and aligning them with your users' needs. So what does that look like? So as a business, maybe your goal is to maximize subscriptions and upgrade people to your premier tier. Does anybody use CapCut? One person. I just started using CapCut 02. And I think it's a phenomenal product. Since we're getting into this coaching space, I've had to wear different hats, and one of them is video editing. I am not a video editor. I've used Premiere like maybe 15 years ago when I started in design, and I tried using DaVinci, but it was just way too technical for me. But for CapCut, what I really liked is that you can play around with the different features, and they're really cool. The transitions are great. And before you actually export your product, they ask you to subscribe for their premium product. And I already saw what the features can do for me. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to subscribe because I already see what the product does and it works for me and it makes it great. So I think that CapCut did a really good job of understanding their goal of having more subscriptions while understanding their users' needs. So why should founders, small business owners, invest in UX? Well, one, it's cheaper. Our ideas get scrapped all of the time, and it's cheaper to test and validate your ideas through clickable prototypes rather than going straight into development and then having to tear down the system when you realize that it doesn't work. So the illustrations I have, popsicles, they're a lot easier to build with. They tear down easily, but no harm, no foul, because they're really cheap to get a piece of paper or popsicle sticks to build up your prototype and to test your idea, versus jumping into the coding stage where it's really expensive and takes a long time to try to test and validate. The second point is that it's quicker to design things. Like I said, you get pencil and paper, you can sketch down your ideas, you can talk to users and validate your ideas, versus developers, there's a lot that has to go into building your system, testing and designing, and testing your ideas and then validating them. So in my opinion, being able to at least get your ideas on paper helps you to validate your ideas a lot quicker. And the third thing, it's iterative. So what's nice is that because it's cheap and because it's fast, you can get your ideas out quicker, you can explore a lot of ideas, and you can fine-tune them before you actually get to the building phase. All right.
Your gift game is strong.
Thank you. Who has the remote?
Excuse me. Is it the remote? Listen, still stuck. She called us.
I wish it was touchscreen.
Why do you touch screens,
Yeah.
UX right here, okay? This is the problem.
Yes. You need a remote.
That's UI.
Fine. We'll turn it back on if it shuts off.
We're good. All right. I know that was a lot. Any questions before I dive into the different tools? No questions. I can breeze through this then. So I have 3 tools that I'm going to share with you today. These tools are from Nielsen Norman Group. Does anybody know who that is?
My man Donnie.
Yeah, so the father of UX design, or the person who coined the term UX, is Don Norman, and his partner Jacob Nielsen started the Nielsen Norman Group to really spread the gospel of user experience design. And they created the Nielsen Norman Group to kind of create standards for user experience and set the industry standards for that. And through their group, there's a lot of online resources of how you can apply different UX tools. And so I'm going to share 3 of them with you today. I'll have QR codes, and I'm probably going to blast through a lot of these just because I really want to get to the questions. So the first one is a heuristic evaluation, also known as a UX audit. And the QR code there is just a link to the Nielsen Norman Group website where it explains to you the step-by-step on how to do a heuristic evaluation. But essentially what it is, it's a rubric to kind of look at your product and say, okay, is my product user-friendly? And it has different heuristics or different checklist items to make sure that things are kind of in compliance or make sure that they're user-friendly. So for example, the one on the screen is called aesthetic and minimalist design. So are you making sure that what's on the screen is important to the user, or is it fluff? There's also things like, what's one? A good one is, I forget what's the name of the heuristic. They're kind of like scientific almost. But basically is there an escape route? Is there an easy way for your user to back out if they made a mistake? Did you add in an X or a back button? And a lot of times when I was working in healthcare, I was like, oh crap, like how are the users supposed to escape from this? Or if there is an error, how do I let them know that there was an error and that they need to do something versus when it's the user's fault or when it's the system's fault. So that was a lot of times I would forget some of these things that are like super important to make sure that users don't get frustrated with your system. So I definitely recommend downloading the sheet and kind of looking through what the different steps are. I won't take the time to go over those different heuristics. But essentially what you do for a heuristic evaluation is you're going to find a task in your product, whether it's an app or maybe you have a service. You're going to like pick one task. In this case, it's on the Banana Republic mobile app. The task is buying a shirt, and they literally float out or diagrammed out the different steps it takes to buy a shirt. And then what they do, is take that flow and then observe it against the 10 different heuristics. So basically your checklist of is the information easy to understand? Does the terminology use industry standards? Is there consistency throughout the app? So one example is your buttons. Maybe one of your buttons says okay, another one says submit, another one says something else. An important heuristic is to have consistency. Oh, you have a question?
Is this a visual code analysis? Are you dropping in your code from your UI in order to get the heuristic evaluation? What method of analysis are they using in order to get this information?
What method? So the rubric or the heuristics, it's kind of like a checklist, and you're looking at your product to say, okay, what's the flow?
Right, but when you share that information with them, right, are you sharing a screenshot depending on the visual
It's a
model?
workbok you're going to get, and you have to do it yourself. Yeah.
Oh, it's a work. Oh,
Yeah.
This isn't a system that you're putting in.
The old saying is you can't afford Norman Group.
Yeah, they're very expensive.
I didn't know if this screenshot was from somebody dropping in their UI to get that information. Or
Oh, no, this is really dumbed down
okay.
PDF. This is kind of an example. Yeah, that's a good question, though, to clarify, so thank you for asking. Yeah, it's literally paper and pencil. The QR code leads to the PDF that you can download, and then you can just go through. So this was just a screenshot of an example. Where was I? Any other questions? Yeah, so I think this is a really great start. Oh, one thing I wanted to mention. This is a great start for those of you who are business owners and don't know how to get involved with UX. This is a quick and dirty way to kind of just go through the checklist to see, okay, where are the places that my users are getting hung up? And one way that I use this in my own workflow is once I go through the steps, there's going to be like maybe 20 bugs that I identify. How do I know which ones that need to get prioritized? So I'm going to start looking at things from criticality level, where something that's critical is going to be, okay, they're going to abandon their cart because they can't click this button. So that's the ones that I want to prioritize. Maybe there's things that are cosmetic, such as the one that's in this this example here, where the text is not really readable. Well, it's not the end of the world because it's just a subtext. So I can get to that the next sprint. So definitely prioritize. Once you do identify, then you could say, okay, which ones are going to be critical for my business to fix versus which ones are the nice to haves and I can get to later. All right. The next tool I have is called journey maps. They're kind of similar to funnels, but they're not. What journey maps are is basically understanding your user's journey from getting from point A to point B. So in this example, Jumping Jamie is trying to figure out whether she wants to stay with AT&T or go to Verizon. And I know that the text is small, but if you download the PDF that Nielsen Norman has, you'll see that the different steps are, 1, review your current plan, define parameters. Then she watches commercials on TV to start comparing which plan that she wants. Then she'll make a call to sales to negotiate which one has the better plan. And then finally, she's going to select which one based on the information that she gathers. So with this chart, what you're going to do is identify who your user is, what's the specific scenario that they are going through, and then you're going to map each step of that process, one to how many ever it takes. The dialog boxes that you see here are kind of what the user feels as they're going through this journey. So maybe the first step for Jumping Jamie is that she's wondering, dang, it's 2025, I need to get control of my spending habits. So it's time for me to make the jump. So that's how she starts. And then at the bottom, that offer seems like a better deal. So you can kind of see where she's at and where the low points are, where she's getting frustrated. Maybe she's talking to sales and they don't have clear information. As a business, that's the area that you really want to focus on, is where there's the most friction. So at the bottom, you can see opportunities, and it's how can we turn those pain points into opportunities and unique selling propositions for the customers that we're trying to acquire. So that's the second tool that I had. Question?
No, I'll wait. We'll keep it for the Q&A.
Okay. The last one that I wanted to share, and I can do a whole talk on this one, is user interviews. So talk to your customers. I think that it's really important to understand who your audience is, how their brain works when using your product. And there's two ways that you can do user interviews. One is user interviews where you're really gathering information to just understand and explore what the actual problem that you're trying to solve is. And then two is usability testing. So once you do have a product, maybe it's your MVP, then you want to start getting that in front of users' hands or in their hands so that you can see, okay, here's the thing, play around with it, mess around with it, tell me how you feel about it. This guide kind of breaks down the step-by-step of how to conduct user interviews. And I don't have a lot of time to get into it, but one thing that I want to iterate when using user interviews as a tool is let your user talk. I know that sounds funny, but a lot of times we're afraid of the silence, we're afraid of the gaps, and so we try to over-explain things and not give our users time to think. So when you're trying to talk to them and gather information, let them have a pause. Don't be afraid of the silence, and maybe you can probe them with further understanding. So rather than asking them yes or no questions, you can probe by saying, tell me about that, or can you explain that a little bit further or clarify? So asking open-ended questions can really help you get more information. Am I out of time? I didn't time check myself.
10 more minutes, or it's just a transition.
Okay. Well, the last thing that I wanted to say about user interviews is when you're doing usability testing or you have something in front of someone, try not to rush them to get through the thing. Don't say, oh, you have to click here or you have to go there. Because it's really up to them to figure out what they're doing, to talk out loud and to explain what their idea is or what they think that they're going to do with that product. And I know that especially for me, when I'm presenting my designs to someone, I want to tell them like, oh, you just have to go click this button here. But the whole point of a usability test is to make sure that they understand what they're clicking through. And it's not a reflection of you as a designer. It's more so a reflection of the product and the things that need to be iterated on. I think that's all I had. In summary, the first thing that we talked about is that UX isn't just making things pretty, but it's about the functionality and making things work. The second is that UX can be scrappy. All you need is a piece of paper and a pencil to churn out your ideas and validate them quickly. And the third is that these 3 different tools that I shared with you are ideas to help you get thinking about how can I apply UX in my business and where are those opportunities for improvement. All right, that was a mouthful, but now is the time for Q&A. Go ahead, Taylor.
So journey mapping, very, very important, right? But let's say you're an organization, you already launched a product, and now you're going to do journey mapping after the fact. How do you avoid bias? Or basically creating a persona and their journey that already aligns with the product you built, and so you're like, oh, we're totally hitting all the points here. So how do you what are some ideas on avoiding those scenarios?
My immediate reaction to that was do it anyways.
Well, I mean, how do you be honest with, because you might already have a product, you might be like, oh, my product's great.
Yeah.
So I already hit that journey. But is this something where ideally you're maybe having a third party, non-biased person do the journey mapping? Like, how do you, like, because I've seen that bias.
Right.
I've seen these journey mappings and it's filled with assumptions or a bias with
Right.
already existing product.
Right. One way to do it is through a third party to get to do that journey unbiased by doing the user research and kind of capturing that. I definitely have seen that in my career where we're asking someone else to do that to remove what we're so close to. The second thing is to gather more data than you think. So the data kind of speaks for itself without the bias, right? Dennis, you had a question?
I was also thinking that like another method could be like usability testing, especially if the product is already developed. So we can essentially we can give the user a task, and then essentially how well they are able to succeed in that task and how quickly will be able to tell you how accurate your initial perception of how good this product was.
Yeah.
With the Banana Republic example, if they're like, I'm trying to figure out what the name of this product is, and they can't see it because of the text issue or whatever, you'd be able to tell usability testing since the product is already developed.
Kind of two different things, right? Because the journey mapping might be the journey that's external from your organization, right? Like the discovery of their pain point, what research are they doing, and things like that. And then you're trying to find the opportunities to bring that into your product or into your marketing. Whereas that one was more of the first one, which I forgot the terminology for.
Heuristic evaluation.
So I think two different.
One approach that can be done is embrace the bias. Put that one in.
Yes.
Then go, now we're going to create 4 more personas.
And then walk them through.
If you have that one, so the other 4, by definition, you have to come up with different journeys, and then you compare and contrast.
Right.
And chances are, with most things, if you try to mimic or limit yourself to one persona, you're screwing yourself anyway.
Yeah, that was a great point. Great point.
Yes.
Multiple personas. Different,
Yeah. One thing that I want to add to that too is our biases are also our hypotheses, right? But then when you actually go through your scenarios with different personas, you can also test your hypotheses to see if the data matches what you thought was initially true. That's a good conversation. Thank you for that question. All right. Any other questions? No questions. Makes my job easy then. I hope.
Work with the Nielsen Norman?
I have not, and their classes are very expensive, but I would like to take a certification class because I think that it would be good
Oh,
too.
what? I talked to them. I turned down a job with them 25 years ago. The argument we got into was back then they were more grandiose blue sky design.
Yep.
And since I was coming from the software industry where I had to actually deliver, that they're like, we're concerned that you might not think grandiose enough.
I can see that.
But they still gave me an offer. That was interesting.
Great presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Abigail. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for
Does
having
anybody
me.
have any one-on-one questions for Abigail after? And you would just, I mean, you could.
I'm gonna be hanging out
You could
here
carry.
in the
You
lobby
could even
area.
carry on here if you want, because there's another session going upstairs still. So if you want to carry on here and people can come and approach you one-on-one, that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks everyone for listening to Abigail. I appreciate it. There's more sessions upstairs if you want to check the agenda as well.